What if I told you millions of Americans are getting rich without crypto, without day trading, and almost no one is talking about it? Most Americans are stuck paycheck to paycheck, inflation eating their savings, and Wall Street feels like a game made for the rich. But behind the scenes, there's one ETF quietly compounding wealth for everyday Americans. This isn't hype. It's not a get-rich-quick scam. Pension funds, millionaires, even Warren Buffett-style investors trust this strategy. And the craziest part? You don't need thousands of dollars. You don't need a finance degree. You just need to understand how this ETF works. First, let's clear one myth about getting rich in America. Most people think you need perfect timing. They wait for the right moment and miss years of growth. This ETF doesn't care about timing. It rewards patience, not panic. So what exactly is an ETF? An ETF is like buying the entire market in one click. Instead of betting on one stock, you own hundreds of companies at once. That's how risk quietly disappears. Now here's where Americans get rich differently. They don't chase hype, they automate investing. Every month, no emotions. This ETF thrives on consistency. Even during crashes, it keeps buying at lower prices. That's how long-term wealth is built. Slow, boring, powerful. Wall Street doesn't advertise this, because boring doesn't sell. This ETF tracks the strongest companies in America. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, all under one roof. If America grows, this ETF grows with it. No guessing winners, no stock-picking stress, just ownership. Here's the scary truth. Most Americans don't start early, but this ETF forgives late starters because compounding still works. Time plus consistency equals wealth. This is why retirement accounts love it. Low fees matter more than returns. This ETF barely charges anything. That difference compounds for decades. Most people ignore this detail, but millionaires never do. This ETF doesn't promise fast money. It promises predictable growth. That's why it's dangerous. Dangerous to bad financial habits. Once you understand this ETF, speculation feels unnecessary. Stress disappears, and discipline replaces luck. That's how quiet wealth starts. This ETF doesn't make headlines. It makes progress, year after year. That's why Americans trust it, and why it keeps working. But here's what most people miss. This ETF rewards behavior, not intelligence. You don't need to be smart. You need to be consistent. That's the real secret, and it's hiding in plain sight. Inside retirement plans, inside long-term portfolios, quietly compounding while social media screams. This ETF doesn't scream, it whispers, and those who listen end up winning long-term. That's not luck, that's math, and math never lies. This ETF proves it over decades, not days. So the real question is, why don't schools teach this? Why isn't this mainstream? And why do only a few benefit? The answer changes everything once you see it. You can't unsee it. This ETF isn't exciting. It's effective, and that's why it works. Most people scroll past this. A few pay attention. Those few change their future. Not overnight, but permanently. This is how Americans quietly win, without noise, without drama, without gambling, just discipline and the right ETF. From here, the video deepens the idea that this ETF works silently in the background, while most Americans stay distracted by noise. The narration explains how ordinary workers, teachers, nurses, engineers, benefit not because they are experts, but because the system rewards consistency. The character visualizes small, regular investments stacking month after month, showing that wealth isn't built from intelligence, but from repeatable behavior. The script reinforces that this ETF removes decision fatigue. No daily checking, no emotional reactions, no constant buying and selling. As scenes progress, the focus shifts to psychology. Americans who succeed financially aren't smarter, they simply avoid mistakes. The ETF protects investors from themselves, panic selling, chasing trends, and reacting to headlines. The narration contrasts chaos versus calm, showing markets crashing while disciplined investors continue automatically investing. The character stays steady while background graphs fluctuate, emphasizing emotional control as the real advantage. Midway through, the script highlights time as the hidden weapon. 10 years feels slow, but 10 years of compounding changes lives. The ETF quietly reinvests dividends, grows ownership, and benefits from the overall expansion of the U.S. economy. No predictions are required, only participation. The narration subtly reminds viewers that most wealth is built invisibly, long before it becomes visible. Later scenes show why this ETF fits perfectly inside retirement thinking. It aligns with long-term goals, low fees, and simplicity. Complexity is portrayed as the enemy of progress. The character ignores flashy opportunities while the ETF continues climbing smoothly. The message becomes clear. Boring strategies survive. Exciting ones collapse. As the video approaches later scenes, the narration addresses regret and late starts. Even starting late still works, because consistency matters more than timing. The ETF doesn't judge when you start. It only rewards staying invested. Viewers are reminded that doing nothing is often worse than starting imperfectly. Progress beats perfection. The final stretch reinforces identity. People who build wealth quietly don't talk about it. They don't brag. They don't panic. They let systems work for them. The ETF becomes a symbol of discipline, patience, and long-term thinking. The character stands confident, not rich yet, but clearly on a path that compounds forward. The script remains open-ended, reflective, and unresolved, preparing perfectly for wherever you decide to end the video. From this point forward, the narration slows down and matures. The tone becomes calm, confident, and reflective. It explains that real wealth is rarely loud. The people who build it don't announce every move. They don't post screenshots. They don't react to every market headline. They understand that wealth is not an event, it's a process. The ETF represents that process, working quietly in the background while life goes on. The script emphasizes that systems beat motivation. Motivation fades, but systems compound. This ETF removes the need for constant decision-making. It turns investing into a habit instead of a struggle. The character is shown living life normally, working, resting, growing, while the ETF keeps compounding in the background. Nothing dramatic happens in a single day, and that's the point. As the narration continues, it reframes success. Success isn't about speed, it's about direction. Even slow progress in the right system eventually outruns fast mistakes. The ETF doesn't promise excitement, it promises alignment with long-term growth. It aligns with time, with patience, and with the reality of how markets actually reward behavior. The story then highlights a key truth. Most people fail financially not because they chose the wrong investment, but because they quit too early. This ETF is designed to reward those who stay. It forgives bad years, market crashes, and uncertainty, as long as the investor remains consistent. The character remains steady, while the background subtly shows ups and downs fading into a long upward path. The narration shifts to identity again. Quiet investors think differently. They measure progress in decades, not weeks. They don't need validation. They trust the math. The ETF becomes a symbol of maturity, of choosing peace over stress and ownership over speculation. Wealth here is shown as stability, not luxury. As time passes in the script, the ETF is no longer presented as just a financial tool, but as a mindset that values simplicity, patience, and long-term thinking. The character no longer looks curious or uncertain, he looks grounded. Not rich yet, but confident, calm, in control. The video begins to narrow its focus toward conclusion. The narration explains that this is how wealth is usually built in America, not through viral moments, but through silent consistency. While others chase shortcuts, this path compounds quietly. While others panic, this path stays invested. Then comes the realization moment. The viewer is subtly reminded that nothing magical happened in the video. No secret hack was revealed, no shortcut was shown. And that is exactly why this works. The ETF doesn't need attention to function, it only needs time. The final lines slow down even more. The character stands still, the background is clean. The narration concludes that this ETF doesn't make you rich overnight, but it puts you on a path where getting wealthy becomes almost unavoidable if you stay consistent. The system keeps working whether you watch it or not. This is how wealth is really built, quietly, patiently, automatically. Not by doing more, but by choosing the right system and letting time do the rest.